classes start. First thing I'm going to do is make up my bed after I have a study session. I like to study for the LSAT as soon as I wake up since I will be taking that exam soon. But in the meantime, watch me make up my bed. Today I woke up late. This is considered late for me. Um, my mom and I did a live last night, and that live ended around 11, so that's why. So once I finish making up my bed, I will get my computer and then we'll do some studying together. I don't know if I'll make up my bed every day. I'm trying to because when my bed is made up, it looks good. Hi, Roy. Good morning. This morning I woke up, so now I'm making my bed. And then after, we'll do some studying together. Good morning, everyone. This is my morning routine before classes start. So I just finished making up my bed. Good morning, Maggie, Lionel, cute girl. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the live. I like to decorate my bed with these like figurines. Yes, I am a graduate student, but classes aren't starting soon. It's starting in like 2 weeks. So before that, I moved in early because I'm also an RA. My mom gave me this flamingo for Valentine's Day. What do you guys think about it? It takes up a lot of space, but I like how it looks. Hi, Jaden. Hi, Market. Hi, Niece. Glad you guys are here. So this is what my bed looks like. It's all made up. Thank you, cute girl. Thank you for your kind words. What do you guys think about my bed? My mom bought me this like new blanket from Burlington and I really like it. It was only $20 and it's really soft and it's really, really big. So it takes up a lot of space. Hello, Mark. Hi. I don't want to Manisha. So sorry if I mispronounced that. So now let's brush my teeth really quickly before I jump on my computer because once I jump on my computer, it's going to be like a quiet study session. So if you comment, I won't respond because I want you to see me how I actually study. Oh, you think I make the best videos, Jaden? Thank you so much. I'm really happy you are enjoying my videos. I try to make videos that people will enjoy, so I'm really happy. What's that? Hi, Q-Way, I believe that is. Hi, what is that? Rachanda? Bye, Jaden. Thank you for tuning in. Hi, Eleanor. Glad you're here, guys. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Thank you for your kind words, Market. Or you're gonna watch another video and you're gonna play the strongest battleground. Okay, have fun and thank you for watching the video. Did you guys wake up early today? It's like 6:59 where I'm at. And that's pretty late for me. I normally wake up earlier, but last night my mom and I did a live, and that live didn't end until like 11. So, oh, cute girl, this is your first time making YouTube videos. So making YouTube videos is really fun. So enjoy the process. Glad you like my shirt, Mark. This is like a nightgown I'm about to wear. So thank you. And it's really soft too. Don't forget to like the video, guys. Subscribe. I would really appreciate it. We're like 5 people away from 670 subscribers, guys. Oh, it's your favorite color? Yeah, I like this too because it's pink. Pink is my favorite color. After pink, I really like yellow and red. But this is definitely a nice color. Yeah, it's nice to be mysterious, cute girl, and not show your face. But I make regular YouTube videos, like full length ones as well. So my face is already shown in there. So I'm like, what's the point of having my face on live for me personally? Okay, just brushed my teeth, washed my face. I don't know if you guys have this, but this is a very cool thing to get. Oh, you forgot to go to sleep, Jaden, so you stayed up the whole entire night. Oh, I like you too, Mom. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. I really appreciate you guys watching this live with me. Thank you for your support. A water flosser. I went to the dentist and they recommended this, so I don't use a regular flosser now. Comes with like this little attachment that goes in your mouth and then the water goes here. Jaden said, I don't like sharing my face either. I think it looks ugly because my face, I'm sure your face isn't ugly. Like, I'm sure you look fine. Okay, guys, just finished using the water flosser. Gets water every day. Oh, you're 19, cute girl? Okay. So are you in college going into freshman year? Oh, your name is Yaden, not Jaden. And your name is Cheville, Mark. So, guys, just finished brushing my teeth. All clean now. Made up my bed. So you know what time it is? It's time to do some studying. Oh, your name is Ava, cute girl. Those are nice names. Hi, Inez. I think I'm pretty friendly. What do you like? What do you think so far? Definitely recommend that you subscribe to the channel so you can see just how friendly I am. I try to do live videos at least once a day when classes start. That may change, but I want to do maybe I'll continue to do that one live video a day. I do like travel videos. I went to South America, Guyana over the summer, New York. So all those videos are on the channel now. I do technology videos as well. So definitely recommend that you subscribe and maybe you can stick around for a while. Oh, you have to go, Mark? Okay, well, thank you so much for tuning into the live. Please consider subscribing to the channel, and maybe I'll see you in another live video or in the comic section of one of my full-length YouTube videos. Oh, thank you so much for liking and subscribing, Inez. Oh, you're a freshman at your school? Cute girl? Yeah. Are you excited? So did your classes start already, or is it starting soon? Are you excited or not? I'm in RA, so I'm getting the residence hall ready for freshmen right now. Time to do some work, guys. Jaden said, "Oh, you love my videos. Thank you so much, Inez. I'm glad you love my videos. Anytime I make a YouTube video, I always try to make videos that people will enjoy, so I'm really happy to hear that." Jaden said, "It is ugly for real. I'm just gonna play block fruits." Box fruits. And I recommend. Okay, Jaden. Well, if I'm still on live, definitely come back. And if you write a comment and I don't respond to you right away, it's because I'm studying. Because once I start studying, I'm not really gonna respond to comments because I want to show you how I actually study in the real world. But for new people joining, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh, Yaden. Oh, because I'm reading the J in your name, but I'll remember that, Jaden. Okay, Yaden. Okay. Yeah, but for the new people joining, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning into this live video. I just made up my bed online for you guys. I brushed my face, brushed my face. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and now I am about to do some LSAT studying. Oh, thank you, Mark. What is that? Thank you, Markel. Glad you like my glasses. These are new. I got it I got it in May and I just picked it up this week.
Yay, Dana.
It's Yay, Dana. How old am I, Inez? Like my mom always says, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter and what is it? The duty of kings and queens to seek it out. So definitely check out my previous YouTube lives to discover my age, guys. Like to keep it mysterious, you can say. But let's start studying because it's already 7. That's a little late for me. I woke up a little late today and I don't really want to be doing this for the whole day, even though I'll probably take a break in between and come back to it later. In the morning times, I like to knock out about 2 to 3 hours of studying. Don't worry, you guys won't probably be on for the whole 2 to 3 hours. But thank you so much for subscribing, Mark. How glad. Thank you so much for your support. Let's start studying, guys. And if you leave the live and come back and you drop a comment, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just showing you the real me studying. And please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you so much if you already subscribed and share the video, guys. Let's get back to work.
Up to this point, we've done some block questions where the argument makes a fairly cookie cutter logical error, which is that when trying to explain a correlation or some phenomenon or event that coincides, it ignores other plausible hypotheses. Right? It's like, oh, it must be A that caused B, or that, oh, it must be B that caused A. It forgot that there were competing hypotheses. But from now on, right, from here on out, we're going to look at questions where the argument, like the one here, does trade on causal logic, and you can definitely say it has something to do with alternative hypotheses, right? Alternative causes, perhaps. But it's not going to be as cookie cutter as like, oh, A is correlated to B, therefore A caused B. You forgot to talk about B causing A, or C causing both B and A, or whatever. It gets a little more complex than that. It'll involve things like considering whether phenomena that you're talking about is simple or complex, right? Simple phenomena has just one cause. Complex phenomena have many causes, right? Many causal factors, you might say. Causal chains can get complicated too, right? Perhaps there are mediating causes, right? X causes Y, which then causes Z. So yeah, sure, X causes Z, but it's mediated by Y. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at this one. The area resident tells us that childhood lead poisoning has declined steadily since the 70s when leaded gasoline was phased out and lead paint was banned. That is great. Good news, right? I don't like childhood lead poisoning, um, and I like that it has declined since the 70s after we phased out leaded gasoline and after leaded paint was banned. And even though the resident doesn't say it, it seems pretty strongly implied that um, this phase out and this ban, they're responsible, right? They're the causes of this decline in childhood lead poisoning. Okay, but this is all just kind of context, right? Because we see the but, we switch over to argument. And what's her argument? Well, she says recent stat indicate that 25% of this area's homes still contain lead paint that pose significant health hazards. And here I'm going to interpret this to mean childhood lead poisoning, right? Again, in context, it seems like the reasonable interpretation. I don't suppose she's all of a sudden talking about like childhood cardiac arrest or something like that, right? That would be kind of crazy. So here's the conclusion. Therefore, if we eliminate lead paint in those homes, childhood lead poisoning in the area will finally be eradicated. Premise to conclusion. And this is a bad argument, right? Bad argument. The reasoning is flawed. And you probably already see why it's flawed. I mean, look, even within the context itself, the area resident hinted strongly at multiple causes for childhood lead poisoning. This is not a simple phenomenon. It's a kind of complex phenomenon with multiple causes, right? Multiple causal factors. One is lead paint. Another is leaded gasoline, right? And you can even get more granular, right? Lead paint where? Right? Lead paint in homes. Okay, that's one cause. Lead paint on the monkey bars in the playground. That's another cause. Lead paint in schools. That's the third cause. Do you know what I mean? Like even lead paint isn't right. It's not so clear what lead paint you're talking about. So here, sure, yeah, 25% of this area's homes contain lead paint. That's not good. Let's get rid of that. But even if you get rid of that, does that mean you're finally going to eradicate childhood lead poisoning in this area? I don't know. Depends on whether there are other causes out there in this area that could contribute to childhood lead poisoning. Okay, so that's the weakness here. In general terms, right, stated in general terms, you can say that this argument failed to consider that any particular effect may have multiple causes, right? Or you could say that just because we identified one cause, right, lead paint in homes, doesn't mean that there are no other causes. Okay, so those are options. Now, C says something similar, right? C says it fails to consider that there may be other significant sources of lead in the area's environment. And yeah, that is totally right. It is both descriptively accurate. The argument definitely failed to consider this, and its failure to consider this is why it's flawed. Because now to turn this into a weakening, right? You just need to do this. Fail to consider that instead of saying there may be, right? Just make it stronger, right? There is, right? Or there are, right? There are other significant. Just think about this. If it's true that there are other significant sources of lead, then wow, your argument is done, right? Your premise is true. Yeah, there's lead paint in homes, but then your conclusion won't follow. Yeah, you can eliminate the lead paint in homes, but that doesn't mean you're going to eradicate lead poisoning because there are other significant sources of lead. So transformation from flaw weakening, pretty straightforward. Now let's practice, right? Let's practice other ways of phrasing this, right? Fails to consider may not be the only way that, or not may not, isn't the only way that the test writers could have phrased it, right? Imagine if, let's say this, the argument presumes without justification that what? That what? How do you have to edit this? The reasoning is flawed because the argument presumed without justification that there are no other, right? That there are no other significant source of light. That's the unwarranted assumption or presumption, right? Now, let's try something else. The resident's argument is flawed in that it overlooks the possibility that what? And now you don't have to change anything, right? Because overlooks the possibility is synonymous with fails to consider. It overlooks the possibility that there may be other significant sources of lead. Okay, great. Just, for these questions that you feel like you have a good handle on, it's a good opportunity in this controlled environment to uh, practice getting more familiar with the different ways that test writers could phrase the answer choice. Next, I want to look at E, which claims that the argument is flawed because it takes for granted that children reside in all of the homes in the area containing lead paint. All right, so there are two problems with this answer. First, it's descriptively inaccurate. The argument just doesn't assume this. The argument only assumes that children reside in some of the homes, right? In some of the homes. Because these 25% of the homes that contain lead, to reach this conclusion, you have to assume a minimum that children live in, like, some of them. But you don't have to assume that every single one of these homes has children in it, right? And even that sum, I'm not even quite sure about the sum assumption because a lot of that depends on how lead poisoning actually works. For um, a child to get lead poisoning, how much contact is required? Right? Is it like repeated day-to-day contact? In which case, yeah, you probably do need to live in that home. But if it's not like that, then actually it doesn't even take for granted that children live in any of these houses, right? Because if just being near a home is, with lead paint is enough, or just visiting a house with lead paint is enough, then it doesn't require that assumption. But anyway, let's not get too deep in there. Let's just say, fine, whatever. It assumes that children reside in some of the homes, right? Even if you fixed it that way, it still wouldn't amount to a flaw, right? Think about this. Think about how different this is. C is from E. This is a flaw. To reach this conclusion from this premise, you really did fail to consider a point in causal logic, right? That this phenomenon here, lead poisoning, is a complex phenomenon that potentially has other potential causes. I mean, not even potentially. You almost said as much, has other causes. Whereas this is just an assumption, right? An assumption, sure, yeah, it's a weakness in the argument, but we shouldn't conflate assumptions with flaws. Like we already know, assumptions live on the spectrum of reasonableness, right? I don't want to talk about like how reasonable this assumption is because I'm not sure, but I do just want to flag that you shouldn't conflate an assumption with a flaw. B says the argument is flawed in that it relies on an assumption which is tantamount to assuming the conclusion is true. This is descriptively inaccurate. The argument does not rely on an assumption, which is tantamount to assuming the conclusion is true. We talked about the assumptions that the argument relied upon. Right? We talked about the assumption in the answer choice E, and I said, sure, it's an assumption, but is it really that egregious of an assumption? And then we talked about the assumption in answer choice C, which is an egregious assumption. It's a flawed assumption. You can't just assume that there are no other causes. Okay, but neither of those is tantamount to assuming the conclusion is true. The conclusion is a different claim. It's a conditional claim, and it just simply is a different claim. Okay, so now what's happening here is that B is describing circular reasoning, also known as begging the question, right? Also known as your premise, or in this case, your assumption, is just more or less a restatement of your conclusion. Okay, so you know how arguments are supposed to be like, oh, premise supports the conclusion. But if your premise and your conclusion are more or less the same claim, they're just restatements of each other, well, then, like, which one is the premise? Which one's the conclusion? Which way does the support flow, rather? Right? It just goes around in a circle because they're more or less just restatements of the same claim, right? Um, I am the best basketball player in the world because I am the best basketball player in the world. I mean, that's a circular argument, right? Like, which one is the conclusion, which one is premise? You can't tell because they're the same. Now, granted, on the test, they're not literally just going to repeat the same thing, but they'll just kind of paraphrase it. Anyhow, they're pretty rare, right? They're pretty rare. If you do enough logical reasoning, you will encounter circular reasoning. Now, A says relies on statistical claims that are likely to be unreliable. This is descriptively inaccurate. I mean, it does rely on statistical claims, right? The premise here is a statistical claim. But the problem is that why is it likely to be unreliable? We have no reason to believe that at all. Right? For this to be true, to be descriptively accurate, I have to have some evidence here that you can't count on this. I have to go like, I don't know. I'm going to rest on this premise, but I see pretty good reason for you not to put a lot of weight into this premise. But in this argument, I see absolutely no reason. I don't know where this stack came from, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Right? I'm going to read this carefully, and I'm not going to question this. Okay, but you can edit this argument, right? You can edit this argument such that this becomes the issue. Here, you just have to do this. Tell me where this statistics came from. Right? If you can tell me where the stat came from, then potentially this could be the issue. For example, if the area resident said, "Oh, you want to know where I got this from? Oh, I extrapolated it, right? You know what I did on a Wednesday at 3 o'clock? I picked one street and I just walked up and down that street and I asked, everybody who would open their doors to me about whether they had lead paint in their homes, and then based on the results there, I just extrapolated up to 25%."
Okay, guys, let's move on to a drill or practice problem. Welcome back, Mulberry. Studying right now, so if I don't respond, that's what I'm doing. Just phone keep falling. I'm gonna stay still, watch. Okay. Markel, thank you for subscribing and watching. See you soon. Okay. So let's go back and answering a practice problem now. The way it goes, they show me a video and then I do a practice problem.
Okay, let's take a look at this question, which I'm sure you notice is quite a bit more challenging than the previous three questions. Maybe it doesn't even seem like it fits. Right? The previous three questions, we encounter a phenomenon called a hypothesis, and we said the issue was, oh, you forgot about other potential hypotheses. Now, I want to tell you that actually you can apply the same frame to this. It's the same thing that's happening. They forgot about other potential hypotheses, but um, that gets covered up with more complications that the test writers threw in there. So we'll get to that. Okay, but first, what I want to do is talk about this question stem. Once again, notice reasoning vulnerable to which one of the following criticisms. And once again, look at the answers. It, right? It referring to the reasoning, right? the reasoning or the argument, right? Bird, it failed to do something, it assumed something, it attributed something. So all very standard, flawed, descriptive, weakening stuff. Okay, so before we do a full analysis of this, I hope you got to the correct answer choice through process of elimination. Because as hard as I think this question is, the test writers could have amped up the difficulty by making the four wrong answer choices more attractive. As it stands, I don't think they did. I think they actually made the wrong answer choices pretty terrible as a way to like modulate down the difficulty to make this question not as hard as it could have been, right? Because I'm thinking even if you didn't have a great understanding of this, you look at the answer, it's like, wait, the evidence is not irrelevant, right? I mean, they're not considering other birds have nothing to do with this, and we're not like, you know, we're not like anthropomorphizing the owls, right? Now we're also not assuming that, you know, owls don't have variation in how good their eyesight is. So okay, so it must be A. I'm not really sure what A is talking about. I don't really know the logic of this, but it's probably A. I hope that's how you got to answer choice A, because it's very important to be pragmatic about this, right? Like at the end of the day, you really do just want to use whatever strategy you can to get to the right answer choice. And process of elimination is definitely a strategy that's available to you. And I don't want you to forget about it, okay? Because I emphasize a lot the fundamentals, right? Like understanding the logic and all that's really important. But when a test writer presents us with an opportunity like this, right? Like this, where they kind of fake us out with how hard this is, right? They really do fake us out. And then they sneak the right answer choice past us. But then, like, hey, they're giving us an opportunity to redeem, right? By like getting through this. Take advantage of that. All right, having said that, let us now get on with the task of analyzing this argument. And we'll do it one sentence at a time because it's a pretty long stimulus with lots of information. Okay, so first sentence: to find out how barn owls learn how to determine direction from which sound originates, scientists put distorting lens over the eyes of young barn owls before they first open their eyes. Wow, I'm already a little bit confused. So, I mean, they're telling us that the scientists want to find out how barn owls figure out where, right, like where sound comes from. I mean, okay, they thought up an experiment having to do with lenses over the eyes of, but you know, I'm confused because I'm not sure like how hearing and eyesight have what they have to do with each other, right? So this is a pretty common experience. I'm flagging it here because you know so much of this test is about you understanding your own state of mind, right? Your own psychology. It's a very common experience to read just the first sentence and just be like, wow, I'm confused. Like when that happens, you need to learn how to manage it. Okay? You have to hold on to that confusion because sometimes the information that you need to understand this shows up later and it'll just kind of click, right? Because you'll have integrated the information, right? Other times, maybe you do need to read the whole argument twice, three times. The point is, if you notice yourself being confused, it is okay. It's a normal experience. Just contain it, right? Don't let it spread into fear. Contain it. Keep pushing forward. Okay, that's how you maximize your chances of figuring out what's going on. And on that note, let's keep pushing forward. The owls with these lenses behaved as if objects making sounds were further to the right than they actually were. Okay. So now we learn that the owls with these distortion goggles on, you know how they behave, you know how they acted? Right? They acted, let's say they put a squeaky toy like here, or let's say the owl is here, the squeaky toy is like here, right? Making the sound. Right? In reality, it's here. But you know, the owl acted as if, right? As if the object, that's the object making the sound, were farther to the right than they actually were. So if this is where they actually were, then the owl is acting as if the squeaky toy were here, right? So this is the error. You know, if this is no error, this is the error. See, already that initial confusion should have dissipated a little bit, right? Like, remember initially we read the first sentence, I was like, hold on, I thought it's about hearing. What do eyes have to do with hearing? Right? Now, this next sentence kind of cleared it up. Apparently, the owl's hearing is somehow affected by their eyes because, right, the distortion goggles made it so that they behave differently. I mean, imagine if the owl's hearing had nothing to do with vision. Then it wouldn't matter if you put distortion goggles on their eyes. They wouldn't behave like this. So you see what I mean? Like it's starting to clear up a little bit. Okay, but there's more to this. Right? Once the owls matured, the lenses were removed. Okay, so now like some time has passed, right? Like the owls are no longer baby owls; they're adult owls. They removed the lens, and now what? The owls continue to act as if they misjudged the location of source. Now, okay, so they didn't correct their behavior. So once you remove the lens, they still behaved the way that they did as if they had the lenses on. In other words, they, it'd be kind of funny if like the squeaky toy was a mouse and they try to go after the mouse, right? But the mouse would be here, right? Actually, it would be here making the squeaky noise. But then the owls would attack like over here where there was nothing. I mean, I say funny, but I don't know. Maybe I should be more empathetic towards owls. But anyhow, at this point, we've reached the end of our premises, right? With the lens on, they misjudged. With the lens removed, they still misjudged. And I'm wondering why, right? Like this entire set is the experiment, the facts, the premises, the phenomenon. Okay, this is the phenomenon. I'm trying to explain it. Why? Well, the scientists have a hypothesis. Right? This is their hypothesis. They explain it thus. Once a barn owl has developed an auditory scheme for estimating the point from which a sound originates, it ceases to use vision to locate the sound. Huh. What do you mean they cease to use vision? I mean, in the first experiment, when there were baby owls, they definitely used vision because otherwise the distorting lens wouldn't have had any effect on the owls determining where the sound came from. They misjudged because you messed up their vision, right? So they definitely use vision. So why are they saying that they cease to use vision here? It must have something to do with the second experiment. See, the scientists are thinking if they continue to use vision, right? If they didn't cease, if they continue to use vision, then presumably once you remove the distorting goggles, they wouldn't misjudge anymore, right? Like once you remove the distorting goggles, the owls would attack where the mouse actually was. But the owls didn't, right? They actually attacked where the mouse wasn't. So that's why the scientists here are explaining that behavior by hypothesizing. Oh, I guess once the owls have an auditory scheme for figuring out where things are, they just don't look at it. That's why, like, even removing the distorting goggles didn't help them correct, right, and adjust. Okay, I mean that's just one hypothesis. Can you think of another hypothesis? And here's the hint. Think about a crucial assumption that the scientists made. When they removed the lens, what did the scientists assume would be the consequence of removing those distorting lenses? They assumed that if they removed the distorting lenses, that their vision would return to normal. Is that a reasonable assumption? Maybe, but we do have information in our phenomenon or set of facts that would suggest that maybe it's not so reasonable. Because when did they put these lenses on the owls? When they were young owls, before they even first opened their eyes. So could it be that the distorting lenses, instead of temporarily messing up their vision, somehow permanently messed up their vision? If it's true that these lenses permanently messed up their vision, then it doesn't even matter if you remove the lenses because their vision's already messed up. See, that would give rise to a competing alternative hypothesis, namely that no, even after they develop an auditory scheme for estimating the point from which sound originates, they continue to use their vision to locate sound. and their vision, because you messed up their vision, right, is messed up. That's why they keep attacking where the mouse isn't. See, that hypothesis is a competing hypothesis with the scientist hypothesis because, I mean, it's completely different, right? Here, scientists think they ceased to use vision. In our hypothesis, no, they continue to use vision, but both fit the facts, right? Both fit the facts. The crucial distinction turns on the assumption of whether the distorting goggles permanently or temporarily messed up their vision. This is why A is the right answer choice. Right? The argument is vulnerable to this criticism. It failed to consider whether the owl's vision was permanently impaired by their having worn the lenses while immature. Right? You see why it's vulnerable now? You see why this is the crucial assumption on which this argument turns. It's because if you toggle this assumption one way, let's say that the assumption is toggled in the direction of not permanent, right, which is temporary impairment, well, then the scientists will be right. But if you toggle the assumption the other way, if indeed it was permanent, then no, it's not this hypothesis at all. In fact, it's the other hypothesis that we talked about. Okay, so that's the crucial weakness of this entire argument. All right, so now before we look at the wrong answers, I want to practice your ability to handle the different ways in which the correct answer choice could have been phrased. They phrased it like this. They didn't have to phrase it like this. They could have used the argument overlooks a possibility. The argument presumes without warrant. The argument presumes without justification. And I want you to, try to see what you have to do. How would you change this language so that it fits? Say the argument overlooks a possibility that what? Right? Use this language here. What did the argument overlook? The possibility that the owl's vision was permanently impaired by their having worn the lenses while immature. Right? Alternatively, you could have said the argument overlooks the possibility that owl's vision was not just temporarily impaired, right? And meaning the same thing as permanently impaired. Okay, so that could have been the right answer. Really could have. They didn't have to say it like this. Okay, so think about it for a second. Right? Think about it for a second. Now move on to the next one. The argument assumes without warrant that what? Right? What did the argument assume? Again, like in terms of content, it's this, right? It's this. How do you have to, what do you have to do to change the wording? Right? The argument assumes without warrant that the owl's vision was not permanently impaired. Right? That's what the scientists assumed. They assumed that the owl's vision wasn't permanently impaired. So the equivalent way to say that is they overlooked the possibility that it was permanently impaired. Okay? So now the last one, the argument presumes without justification, that's the same phrasing as this one, right? So then, of course, the text should be the same as well. The argument presumed without justification the owl's vision was not permanently impaired. All right, so is any of this necessary to getting the answer right? Obviously not, right? Like I said, from the top of this lesson, you didn't even really need to understand this argument that well or this answer choice that well to get it right. Okay, because as it turns out, the four other answers weren't super attractive, right? But that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is just to use this as practice. We are anticipating issues that will come up in the future. Next time, maybe you won't be so lucky. Next time, maybe the wrong answer choices will be more attractive. In which case, you do have to fall back on your fundamentals. Right? That's why we spend a lot of time talking about, fundamentally what is happening here from an experimental point of view, right? From the scientific reasoning point of view. What kind of assumption was made? Why is it that toggling this assumption in one direction helps with the scientist's hypothesis, but toggling this assumption in the other direction helps with the alternative hypothesis? Right? That's why we focus on the different ways in which they could have phrased this correct answer choice. Okay, I mean, just imagine if they came up with answer choice B that, said this, right? The argument presumes or assumes without warrant that the owl's vision was permanently damaged. Right? Just imagine if they did that. The difficulty of this question will shoot straight up because this is so close to being the right answer. It's just one word off. Okay, and you are going to encounter something like that in far harder curve breaker questions. Okay, so this is why want to practice. Right? I want you to practice with this. Okay, like I said, each of these are pretty bad, but it is still worthwhile stating in explicit terms just why it's bad. B claims that the argument assumes that the sense of sight is equally good in all owls. No, it doesn't. First of all, notice that the entire argument is about barn owls, which is just a subset of all owls. Okay, so clearly the argument is not making any assumption about all owls. At best, it's making assumptions about barn owls. And even then, even if you amended this to instead of, actually, I guess I shouldn't cross out all. Even if you amended answer choice B to say in all barn owls, I mean, it's still not right because it doesn't assume that uh, there is absolutely no variation in sight, right? In the quality of sight in barn owls. I mean, just think about how absurd of an assumption that will be to make. Humans have variation in sight. Right? Some people are nearsighted. Some people are really nearsighted. Some people have perfect vision. Where some people have astigmatism. There are all sorts of variation in sight. Like, who would assume that barn owls are completely uniform in their sense of sight? That's just like a crazy, bizarre assumption. Okay, so it's not fair to say that scientists are making this assumption. They're not. Now, C says attributes human reasoning processes to a non-human organ. I mean, okay, fair enough, non-human organism, right? Yeah, last I checked, owls weren't humans, but it's also descriptively inaccurate. The argument doesn't attribute human reasoning processes. The argument is just trying to figure out owl reasoning processes, right? I mean, the owl somehow figures out where sound comes from, right? If it wants to catch a mouse, it hears a squeak, it needs to determine where that squeak came from. Okay, so like just because humans also do this doesn't make it a human reasoning process, right? It's like saying, oh, breathing is a human physiological process that is being attributed to owls. Um, yeah, okay. D is different from these two, right? D is descriptively accurate, but it's describing not the vulnerability of the reasoning. It says it neglects to consider how some other storing lens might affect the behavior of other bird like falcons, for example. Sure, true. Yeah, I mean, look, as long as this stimulus is, it's still pretty short out of the entire set of possible things to consider. It's going to neglect to consider the overwhelming majority of those things, including how these lenses might affect the behavior of falcons. But, like I said, even though it's descriptively accurate, it's not describing the vulnerability of the reasoning. Why this reasoning is weak has nothing to do with how distorting lens affects falcons. And then lastly, E says it uses as evidence experimental results that were irrelevant to the conclusion, straight up inaccurate, right? Now, I think after reading the first sentence, we might have thought, maybe it's irrelevant, right? Because we're trying to talk about sound, but you're talking about vision, so maybe it's not relevant. But then as soon as you read this next sentence, it becomes relevant, right? The owls prove that actually it is relevant because they do use their vision. So yeah, it's not like this.
Next practice problem. Oh, hi, Mulberry. I had a good sleep. I'm probably yawning more than often because we did the live and that live ended pretty late. But I slept okay. What about you? The reason I don't put is most vulnerable criticism. Many symptoms. Got that one right, but got it wrong in blind review. So that means I answered it correct the first time. But if I were to actually taking the test and I went back and changed my answer, it wouldn't be right. So let's watch the video.
Okay,
Let me
this
tissue for
was
my
a
notes.
tough question. Question STEM.
Don't second guess yourself, guys. That's my problem.
But the previous question wasn't as hard as this one. Why? It didn't have anything to do with the stimulus. The previous question was easier because the answer choices were easier. Not so here. Here, the answer choices are tougher. See, you don't have control. Test writers could have made a decision to make this question easier by making the answer choices easier, in which case you'd be able to skate by without an understanding of what's happening. Just like we did in the previous question, right? Like I said, in the previous question, you
He can join my studying as long as there's no background noise. I'll send you the link. But if there's background noise, he's gonna be cut off the live. So guys, another person's gonna start studying with me. But if you're a new viewer here, hi, woke up this morning, you saw me make up my bed, brushed my teeth. Now we're studying together. Please do subscribe. We are one person away from 570 subscribers, guys. So please keep your comments coming. I'm not really responding actively as the comments come in because I'm studying and seeing my natural habitat, guys. But definitely keep commenting, share the video, and please do subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Thank you so much, John. John, you're not subscribing? Okay, well, thank you for leaving a comment, John. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to leave a comment and watching this live video. But for the new people studying for the LSAT right now, so keep your comments coming. I may not respond actively because I want you to see me actively studying, but please do subscribe. Greatly appreciate it.
probably got it right, the owl question, through process elimination without really understanding. See, if you keep applying that approach, you're kind of leaving yourself up to the whims of the test writers, right? And you are setting yourself up to stumble when you come to harder questions.
Just made it to 670. Thank you for the 670 subscriber. Hi, is that Sophie or Soapy? Thank you. Go back to studying now.
Okay, this is why even for easier questions, I always want to emphasize analyzing the causal logic at play. Because if you can always do that, then it doesn't matter. I mean, that analysis will handle easy questions. That analysis will handle hard questions like this one. And you just don't care what answer choices they throw at you. They can throw anything at you and you'll be fine. Okay, so this is why I painstakingly go through the process of breaking out what is actually happening under the hood. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the stimulus. But actually, kind of want to start in the middle with sentence two. Okay, because there are like there are a lot of reasons why this question is hard. One of them is the fact that the test writers layer on a lot of complications, and the complications obscure the fact that at its core, it's still causal logic. It's still the logic of explaining phenomenon by coming up with causal stories. Right? Have you anticipated or accommodated for alternative hypotheses that could also explain? Right? In that frame, this question is no different from all the other questions. But the key is to figure out a way to view this question so that it really does resemble the other questions that we've done, where the crucial weakness of the reasoning is that the argument failed to consider some alternative hypothesis. Okay, so I want to consider this, right? And I want to consider this sentence, right? Because this bit is just editorializing. The author is saying, "Oh, you know what? It's surprising to me." I mean, okay, fine, but like, what's the fact, right? What is the phenomenon? Tremendous variation among different countries in incidence of these symptoms with people with mental illness. Already, we have here abstract language. That's the complication, right? They don't tell us what mental illness, they don't tell us symptoms, they don't tell us what country. So it's helpful, it's really helpful if we pin this down. Let's say that mental illness here we're talking about schizophrenia. Okay, that's the mental illness. And what are the symptoms of schizophrenia? Right? What are the symptoms? Well, you have things like insomnia, right? You have things like loss of appetite. You have things like visual hallucination. You have things like auditory hallucination. Okay, so it's just listing some of the symptoms of the mental illness. And, you do this, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more clear that this is not the same as this, right? The illness is the illness, the symptoms are how the illness manifests. Okay, so we're starting to get some um, traction on this abstract language. Okay, let's keep going. Now, the phenomenon is telling us there's a lot of variation among different countries in the incidence of these symptoms, right? So let's just pick two symptoms. Let's pick auditory hallucination and visual hallucination. So they're saying, like, depending on which country you are, you may get more of one and less of the other. And in the other country, you get more of the other and less of the one, right? So I don't know, maybe let's just say in the USA, right, versus in India, right? That's the variation. In US, there's way more visual hallucination than the other stuff, whereas in India, there's way more auditory hallucination than the other stuff. Now, I'm straight up making this up. Okay, so this is like, don't fact check me on this. I'm telling you, I'm making this up. Okay, but the point is, you get to make stuff up in an attempt to get better traction on what they're talking about. Now I know what they mean when they say tremendous variation among different countries and how these symptoms manifest. Okay, so I'm thinking in America, schizophrenia tends to manifest more in visual hallucinations, whereas in India tends to manifest more in auditory hallucinations. Okay, great. Now what? Right? Like, now I want to understand why. Right? Like, you hit this phenomenon. Obviously, you want to understand why. What causes this? What can explain this? Okay, now let's look at the first sentence, which tells us a cause, any symptoms of mental illnesses. So here we're talking about hallucinations, schizophrenia, are affected by. This is just straight up them telling us there's this causal relationship present. What's the cause? Organic factors such as deficiency in a compound in the brain. Ah, okay. Again, we hit this difficulty of abstract language, right? Scientific jargon. With more background knowledge, it's helpful. It really is. If you know more about the world, stuff like this just reads easier. But you don't have to, right? You can just make some stuff up. Let's just make some things up, right? Like, what compound in the brain? Okay, dopamine, that's a compound, right? Glutamate, right? So those compounds, right? They're telling us, what the causal story is? Like, what affects these things, right? Dopamine, right? Glutamates, or, collectively they're called compounds in the brain compounds, right? There's your causal story. This thing causes the manifestation of these symptoms. Okay, so that's true. Yet, what is surprising is that the manifestation of these symptoms isn't uniform across different countries. Like in America, we already said this happens more. In India, this happens more. Hmm, how do we explain that? Well, if we make the assumption that we live in a simplistic causal world, meaning effects only have one cause, if we just grant that assumption for a second, like, our world's super simple, right? Every single phenomenon just has like one cause. Okay, well, then you know what? This conclusion actually kind of makes sense, right? This conclusion or hypothesis or attempt at explaining this phenomenon, right? Now I'm wondering, well, you told me that, dopamine, glutamate, other brain compounds, that has an effect on the manifestation of these symptoms. And you also told me that in the US, there's way more visual hallucination, whereas in India, there's way more auditory. It's not uniform, in other words. Well, then, how do I explain that? I can explain it by saying, hey, it must be that these very organic compounds, which affect symptoms, right? The very same organic compounds, they are not evenly distributed around the globe. right? Whatever it may be, let's say dopamine, excess dopamine is more, responsible for visual, whereas excess glutamate is more responsible for auditory. Well, then it must be that this must not be uniform as well, right? That there's more dopamine imbalance in schizophrenia patients in the US, whereas in India, there's more glutamate imbalance, right? So this is actually not a terrible hypothesis if you grant this ridiculous assumption that we live in a simplistic causal world, that complex phenomena such as schizophrenia have simple causal explanations, right? But if you don't grant that, if you don't grant that, then you're thinking, wait a second, this could be a not causal, complex causal model that we're dealing with. Who knows what else could explain this? And if this were true, now you have no reason to think that there is an uneven distribution of this, right? This could be totally evenly distributed, but how do we explain the variance in the symptoms? Well, by appealing to other causal factors that are different when it comes to the US and India. That's the crucial assumption, right? And that's just what we find in answer choice C. The reasoning is most vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that it fails to consider the possibility that cultural factors significantly affect how mental illnesses manifest themselves in the symptoms. So culture is the other causal influence that the argument assumed away, right? So you see, the argument here is ignoring alternative hypotheses right over here. What else can account for variation in the symptoms, right? Variation in symptoms, depending on which country you're in. Well, maybe it's culture, because you know what? Culture definitely is different across different countries. Perhaps that's the thing that accounts for differing manifestation of symptoms, as opposed to somehow landing on the conclusion that your brain chemicals are like Americans, I don't know, like have more dopamine, right? But Indians have not less, more glutamate, right? The other way around. Okay, so once again, let's practice playing around with how this correct answer choice could brings. Okay, so take a second and just consider these three different openings that I'm setting up. The first one says the argument assumes without warrant that something. Second one says overlooks the possibility. Third one says presumes without justification. And think about like what the rest of it has to say. And again, keep in mind that I'm not going to change that much. Right? Some of these will just repeat this, but some of them will make it. The first the reason is vulnerable to criticism on the grounds that the argument assumes without warrant that cultural factors don't significantly affect how mental illness manifests themselves in this, right? Like saying in a different way, perhaps in more abstract language, the argument assumes without warrant that this other hypothesis isn't present, right? Okay, that's the same thing as saying the argument failed to consider the possibility that it's this other hypothesis that accounts for this phenomenon you're trying to explain, right? Yeah, that could have been the right answer as well. Now, what about this one? The argument overlooks the possibility that cultural factors significantly affect how mental this you don't have to change
Mountain height
anything.
is
This phrasing
71 feet.
is
Distance
this
climb
phrasing,
is
right? The
28.
argument failed to consider something.
Find the difference of the
That's the
mountain
same as
height and the
overlook the
distance in the time.
possibility of that same thing. Okay, so this one's pretty straightforward.
Wow, this is
Now,
your
the last
grade?
one, hopefully you identify as equivalent to the first one, right? It's just presumes that cultural factors don't significantly. Once again, if this is the language you get, well, then the argument has, without justification, presumed or assumed that there are no other hypotheses that can explain this. Right? If this is the language that you get, then the argument is overlooking the possibility that there are other hypotheses that could just as well explain this you're trying to explain. Okay, so now let's look at the wrong answers. I want to look at B first because B is definitely the hardest answer to get rid of. It's the most attractive wrong answer. It says that the reasoning is vulnerable to criticism because it neglects the possibility that nutritional factors which contribute to deficiencies in compounds in the brain vary from culture to culture. So, first of all, difficulty starts with parsing the language. Right? Neglects the possibility that what? Right? That what? What's the noun here?
You getting it?
Nutritional factors.
Mhm.
What kind of nutrition?
What?
Oh, the ones that contribute to deficiencies in compounds in the brain. Those are the, we're talking about like all nutritional factors. We're just concerned with the subset of nutritional factors that have a causal impact, right? Contribute to deficiency. Causal language again. That have on deficiency, say, build the main, right? The compounds in the brain. They're saying those nutritional factors also vary from culture to culture. Oh, wait. So doesn't that mean that B is also introducing an alternative hypothesis? Just like how C is introducing an alternative hypothesis, right? C is saying, hey, you know what? Do you ever consider it's culture that's doing this? Whereas B, it sounds to me like it's saying maybe it's these nutritional factors that is causally, contributing to this, which is what one might explain this phenomenon. Okay, yeah, that is not the right interpretation of what's going on. Okay, because I just only ask you, like, is he talking about a direct causal impact or is it an indirect? In other words, these nutritional factors that can, that vary from culture to culture, do they directly have an impact on these symptoms, or is their causal impact mediated by some other thing? The answer is that it's mediated. I mean, they tell us explicitly that these nutritional factors that contribute to the deficiencies in the compounds in the brain, right? That's this. So these nutritional factors in B that's contemplated here is a prior cause of these compounds. So if this thing, the nutritional factors have an impact, have any chance of explaining this phenomenon, it's mediated through this original explanation. And that's why B isn't right. Whereas C.
Welcome back, cute girl. As you guys can see, there's another guest studying in the live video. So instead of one, now you can watch two people study. Yay! So don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Let's do another practice question.
let's take a look how you did on this question, starting with question 7. Law. Because the argument fails to consider now, this language being baked into the question set means that if the correct answer choice is specific enough, this is identical to a weakening question. Right? The correct answer choice is going to identify a major unwarranted assumption and cut against that assumption. Okay, anyway, we do first have to read this argument and analyze it, figure out what's wrong with it, and that's not easy because, well, a couple different difficulties here, and I'll talk about each of them as we encounter them. So, researcher tells us that every year, approximately the same number of people die of iatrogenic disease, and I am going to skip all this stuff, as die of all other causes combined. Wow, okay, great. So, see, skipping all this stuff in the middle allows you to get a clear handle on the outside structure of the sentence. Right? Every year, about the same number of people die from this thing as die from all other things. So, wow, this is a scary thing if it's responsible for so many deaths. Right? You add up all the other causes, cancer, heart attacks, right, homicides, car accidents, whatever, add it all together, yeah, it's about the same as this iatrogenic disease. What the hell is this thing? Direct result of medical treatment or housing. Interesting. I see why they put it in quotations, because not really a disease, right? It's a direct result of medical treatment or hospitalization. So I'm thinking, wait a second, how do you die from hospitalization? How do you die from medical treatment? Isn't that like not supposed to happen? But hopefully it won't take you long to realize, yeah, it's not supposed to happen. But our hospitals aren't perfect, our doctors aren't perfect, right? They make mistakes, they're misdiagnoses, they're prescriptions, they're just surgeons make errors. I mean, even if everything goes right, maybe you just get unlucky, right? Like there's an infection or something. Right? So that's what they're talking about when they talk about iatrogenic disease, right? All of this. So you can think of it as just error, right? Error, medical error, or something like that, or you just got unlucky or something like that. Okay, so all of this added together, equivalent to the same number as cancer, heart attack, blah 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 blah. That's kind of nuts. Okay, but anyway, where's this going? Well, here comes the conclusion, and I already see an if. This is a conditional conclusion, so you can handle this in one of two ways, right? If you feel comfortable, with conditionals, then yeah, you just read it and you'll get it. If not, you can always apply this technique of kicking the sufficient condition up into the premise set. Right? Just say, let's make it another premise, right? The premise is that we live in a world where medicine found a way of preventing all iatrogenic diseases, right? No more errors. Okay, so in that world, in that hypothetical world, you see how it's doing the same thing as this if, right? In that hypothetical world, where somehow magic happened and we were able to prevent all errors, then what? Then the number of deaths per year would decrease by half. Huh? Yeah. Right? Wait, isn't this just simple arithmetic? You just told me it's like half is attributable to iatrogenic disease. A totally logical argument to me, so I am in trouble. Now, first, I want you to sit with that feeling for a bit, okay? This, like, what is going on, I'm in trouble feeling. Psychologically, it's very important for you to get acquainted with when you're feeling that way, especially in flaw questions, because flaw questions tell you up front something is not right with the reasoning. So you're already sort of on guard, right? So this dissonance between I know something's wrong, but I don't know what's wrong. It's an important feeling to become aware of. Once you become aware of it, it allows you to do something about it, right? Maybe you need to take a different stance, look at something different, right? Because clearly the way you're thinking about it isn't right. They're telling you there's a flaw, but you think this is reasonable, right? You think this makes sense. Okay, so where do we start? Well, for starters, this is all causal, right? The logic is causal. In this set of flaw questions, we're looking at causal logic. So the hint is to think back to some previous questions. In particular, think about the lead paint question, right? Think about the media and economy question. Those were questions where we dealt with this idea of complex phenomena having complex, multiple causes, right? Here, death is one such complex phenomenon. We are explicitly told that there are many different causes of death. Iatrogenic disease is one of them. Okay, great. Many causes of death. Iatrogenic disease is one of them. You get rid of one of the causes, what does that mean? That means you're in the clear now, right? Does that mean you're in the clear? Let's think about this. Let's map out this causal chain. How does someone die from iatrogenic disease? Well, first of all, the person is sick, right? The person is sick because you wouldn't get an iatrogenic disease unless you sought medical treatment or hospitalization, right? You see, so you're sick, and then what do? You're not just any sick. You're so sick that you actually go seek medical treatment or hospitalization. So here I'll just put treatment. And what happens next? What happens next is that there is unfortunately an error or a mistake. And it's this error or mistake, which is what they dub the iatrogenic disease, right? This is the iatrogenic disease that causes death. Okay, right? That's the causal chain mapped out. You get sick, which causes you to get treatment, which causes the doctor to make a mistake, which causes you to die, right? These are all causal errors. Okay, now imagine a world where we eliminated all iatrogenic diseases. This is gone, right? This is gone. Does that mean this is gone? Does that mean you don't die? Well, certainly for some people, like let's say, we need to dig in now. It really depends on what kind of error we're talking about. Right? It really even depends on what kind of sickness you're talking about. Because we're contemplating a counterfactual world. Right? In the factual world, the doctor made a mistake, which led to death. In the counterfactual world, let's say the doctor didn't make a mistake, right? That's what we're contemplating. All iatrogenic disease is being prevented. The doctor didn't make a mistake. Does that mean you don't die? I'm not sure. I need to look at, well, all sorts of things.
Fell down again, man.
Because you know what sickness does? Sickness sometimes causes death too, right? So it really, really depends. I mean, look, I'm sure for some people it really was the doctor's error that was the necessary cause of their deaths, right? Like the doctor didn't screw up, you wouldn't have died. But in other cases, the doctor's screw up, sure, may have caused death, but even if the doctor didn't screw up, maybe the sickness is so severe that eventually you would have died anyway. You see, so this is why I mentioned you think about the lead paint question, it's multiple causes. You target this as your effect, as your phenomena, as the thing you want to explain. Well, yeah, sure, this is one causal pathway, but that doesn't mean there aren't other causal pathways, right? You think about willingness to spend in that economy and media question, right? Yeah, you identify one causal pathway, but hey, maybe there are other causal pathways as well. Okay, so now let's take a look at the correct answer choice first, which is C. The reasoning exploding his argument failed to consider that people who don't die of one cause may soon die of another cause. That's exactly right. You failed to consider that people who don't die of one cause, right? One cause here referring to the iatrogenic disease, may soon die of another cause. What's the other cause? The original sickness. This may cause death anyway. Okay, so now as an exercise, let's play around with the wording, with the phrasing. Let's get rid of this, okay? The reasoning is flawed because the argument assumes without warrant that what? You have to edit this as little as you can, right? Edit this. The argument assumes without warrant that people who do not die of one cause won't soon die of another cause. That's how you have to change it, right? Because that's the unwarranted assumption. That's the fallacious assumption. You're talking about death. You're talking about, in the context of iatrogenic disease, which, they told us iatrogenic disease is a consequence of you getting hospitalized or seeking medical treatment anyway. In that context, you do not get to assume that people who don't die of this cause won't die of another cause anyway, right? Because that's unwarranted. You have to realize that you're talking about people who are sick, very sick, in fact, right, to the point where they need to this is pretty serious, right? This is, I suppose, maybe milder. Okay, so that's how you would have to amend this language. Let's try another. The reasoning is flawed because the argument neglects to take into account the possibility that what? Just this. You don't have to change anything. Right? Neglects to take into account the possibility is the same as fail to consider. Okay, let's try one more. Reasoning is flawed because the argument presumes without justification that what? That people who do not die of one cause won't soon die of another cause, right? Presumes without justification is the same phrasing as assumes without warrant. Okay, it's the opposite phrasing of this, of fails to consider. Okay, now we played around with this particular phrasing, right? But the test writers really could have given us other ways to phrase the right answer choice. For example, the argument fails to consider what? A cause need not be the necessary cause. Right? You fail to consider that, yeah, sure, this is a cause, but it need not be a necessary cause. Meaning, even without it, this effect could still result. Why? Because, right over here, some other cause. Okay, so that's a very different way of phrasing the right answer choice. It could have been the right answer. Okay, here's another one. The reasoning is flawed because the argument fails to consider an effect may have multiple causes. Right? Here's one, here's another. That's also a different way of phrasing this. Here's one more. The absence of a cause does not guarantee the absence of an effect. Right? The absence of a cause, you get rid of iatrogenic disease, does not guarantee the absence of the effect because it depends on what kind of effect you're talking about. Certain effects can have multiple causes. All right. Why do I talk about all this stuff? The point is, I want you to be flexible in the way you think about causal logic. Right? You can't count on predicting how they're going to phrase the answer. You can't do it. There are way too many different phrasings, right? So that's why what you can rely on, and I think what you should rely on, is just a solid foundation in how causation works. Next up, let's take a look at E, which says whenever a non-iatrogenic disease occurs, there is a risk of an iatrogenic disease. Okay, so first, I think the hurdle we need to overcome is just parsing this, right? Like, what does this mean? Well, what is a non-iatrogenic disease?
Hello, Sammy. Yes, we're studying today. Or disorder. Phrasing in the argument. This tripod keeps falling, man. should watch the video.
Okay, let's see how you did on this question. Starting with them, reasoning most vulnerable to criticism. The key phrases here that land us into in flawed descriptive weakening territory. We're asked to describe why the reasoning is weak. Okay, so what's the reasoning? Well, you have here a conclusion preceded by two premises, and I hope you were thinking in terms of causal logic, because that's this entire set is causal logic. Now, I know there are these two big conditional logic indicators, if, but you have to remember while it is important to be familiar with the translation rules, you cannot just ever mindlessly apply those rules. Not every instance of if means that you're like the claim is a conditional claim. Okay, and here, I mean, I suppose you could superficially translate this as a conditional claim, but if you think about what this entire argument is actually saying, it's got to be a causal argument. Right? The logic here has to be causal. I mean, start down over here, avoiding that dairy in one's food, right? Eating less cheese, eating less milk, what? You're less likely to eat fat, right? That makes sense. Why does that make sense? Right? Why is it that if I avoid milk and cheese, I'm less likely to eat fat? Right? You know the answer to this question because it's just common sense. It's because milk and cheese contains fat, right? It's causal. The underlying relationship here is if I don't eat milk and I eat less cheese, that's the reason why I'm eating less fat, right? That's why I'm less likely to eat fat. Okay, you notice the stimulus here, the author, credit where credit is due, who recognizes that eating fat is a complex phenomenon. Right? Just because I'm not eating milk and cheese anymore, it doesn't mean I've completely eliminated fat, right? It's just less likely because there are other sources of fat out there, right? Other causes. Anyway, so let's map this out in using the causal chain, right? Dairy has a causal impact. Eating this is the consumption of dairy, right? Has a causal impact on the amount of fat that you're consuming, right? Again, I don't want to write the arrows here because I mean, it's kind of baked into this relationship, right? Amount of dairy you eat determines partially, at least, how much fat you eat. Now we can back up to the first sentence and fat, right? If you avoid fat in your diet, the probability of avoiding heart disease is increased. So fat also, again, ask yourself why, right? Why? It's because fat consumption contributes to heart disease. And once again, the author is being quite careful in talking about this using probabilistic terms because she understands that this is a complex phenomenon. It's not just, you can't just pin all the blame on fat consumption. There are other things like genetics, right? Stress, other environmental things that all potentially can contribute to heart disease. That's why, she's saying if you avoid fat in your diet, you decrease the probability of getting heart disease, right? Because it's just a causal component, right? It can contribute, right? This is a complex phenomenon. This is a complex phenomenon. So now look at this final claim, right? The probability of maintaining good health is increased by avoiding dairy foods. So
It looks like G stopped studying, guys. You can't hear them. I don't know what happened to their volume, but I'm still going. So there's like two more questions, and then we'll take a break.
okay, so the conclusion is that dairy foods, right, has a causal impact on good health. Again, I'm interpreting this as a causal claim. Okay, so where do we start analyzing this argument? I suppose we can start with thinking about the fact that heart disease is a complex phenomenon, right? Meaning potentially multiple things can have an impact on it, right? Can affect heart health or heart disease. Through that lens, let's think about the logic of this argument. And what do we know about dairy? Well, fat is a component of dairy, so less dairy you eat, the less fat you eat, sure, and fat negatively affects heart health. Right? So yeah, In that way, you can say dairy contributes to heart disease, right? This is a causal error that flows through. But dairy has other things in it, right? The less dairy you eat, um, what else? Right? Calcium. Right? The less dairy you eat, the less calcium. What's the causal relationship here between calcium and heart disease? I'm not sure, right? The less dairy you eat, what else? Right? What else? Dairy has a lot of good nutrients. Right? Less nutrients you're going to get. What's the relationship here now between less nutrients and right? This is a negative. Maybe this is a positive. Right? Maybe this is a positive. You see what I mean? So you can't say, oh, I've identified one causal pathway where dairy is not so great for heart health. Therefore, dairy is not good for heart health. Okay, you're forgetting about other things in dairy, right? So taking a different lens, you can think about this through cost benefit analysis. Viewed through that framework, what's happening here is that the argument only identified one downside of dairy, right? One negative, which is fat, sure. But then it didn't consider potential upsides of dairy, right? Like I said, maybe dairy has calcium, which is good for heart health. Maybe dairy has other things that's good for heart health. How does it weigh out in the aggregate? Don't know. That's the crucial unwarranted assumption. Okay, dairy in relation to heart health, there may be multiple effects, and you have to aggregate them if you want to say something about, like, oh, in general, whether dairy is good or bad for heart health. Okay, but now we get to turn to the other crucial assumption, which is that the conclusion isn't even about heart health, it's about just a good health in general. I mean, come on, now you just open up a whole other can of worms, right? Now we get to exploit the huge gap that exists between heart disease, right, heart health, and good health in general. Okay, because yeah, of course, heart health is a major factor for good health in general. But you know what? So is lung health, right? That also matters. I don't need to write more. Obviously, there are lots of other things that matter for good health. So if the conclusion ultimately wants to talk about good health, I mean, come on, right? Dairy can have all sorts of effects on health that have nothing to do with health. Okay, so with that, let's look at answer choice A, which says argument ignores the possibility that even though a practice may have potentially negative consequences, its elimination may also have negative consequences. This is totally not what I expected. And once again, demonstrating that there are just so many different ways to phrase the vulnerability, or to phrase the flaw. How do we phrase it? We phrased it, maybe like this. The argument assumes without warrant that some identified effect is the only effect, right? That's what we were saying. Yeah, dairy has an identified effect. It's not good for heart health. But you're assuming that that's the only effect, right? Because, well, like we said, it could have positive effects, right? Dairy could contain calcium, which could positively contain nutrients, positively helps with your heart health. So that's the language, at least I was expecting. This is actually saying the same thing, just in a roundabout way. It is the right answer. How? Well, what's this practice? Practice, of course, is consuming dairy. Sure, yeah, even though it's consuming dairy may potentially have negative consequences. What negative consequences? Potentially could be bad for your heart, right? So there it is.
Very next question, ma'am. I be getting tired listening to the video sometimes, especially if I get the question right. So guys, I'm going to take an hour break and then I'll come back and do some drills. G is eating his breakfast. I had a banana. Can they hear me? If you guys stayed watching me study for so long, thank you so much. Please, I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did a little poll. Some people said they liked it, some people said they don't. I'll probably do another video like this though. Greatly appreciate if you stuck around. Please consider subscribing and liking the video and sharing it. We got to 671 subscribers at this live, so thank you so much. Now let's see if they can hear me. Hello, can you guys hear me? G, can you hear me? G, can you hear me? It's like they did the volume. Can you hear me? Hello? I don't think they can hear us, guys. Anyway, so G's eating his breakfast. I had a banana for breakfast. Oh, well, I'm gonna end the video now because I ate breakfast. You saw me studying. So thank you guys so much for watching this live with me. Don't forget to subscribe, share the video, and I'll definitely log on later today for live because I'm going to need your help tomorrow. My first day. Well, not my first day ever of RA training, but it's the first day for this year of RA year training. So they want us to wear yellow. So you guys have to help me choose my outfit. I have two options. I'm not keep studying. I'm taking a break. Keep studying. I've been studying for a while. But anyway, guys, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, comment, and I'll be back later on this afternoon. So if you want to help me choose out my outfit, definitely subscribe for that. So have a great day, guys. See you soon.